I have a whole stock pot full of water, and what we're doing today is we are going to make some good old lasagna. Got a box of it right here. I decided to stray away from Louisiana for a while and go down to Italy, and we're going to do us a lasagna recipe. Now I know what you're thinking, damn it SonicBlu, it's about time you're doing a lasagna recipe. I've always wanted to see how you would put together a lasagna. Well, it's really very simple, but it takes a lot of prep work. I mean, look at this, we're needing a stock pot, a skillet, a pot, all of these ingredients, and plus you need one of these. Well, it's got all of my ingredients in it, but let's take all this out and actually show you. Lots of cans, lots of seasonings. This is a casserole dish. It is about 8 by 11.5, and it's perfect size for making lasagna. 8 by 11.5, remember those dimensions. And you can find those in any common grocery store. Walmart even carries them. If you got a Walmart nearby, go to Walmart and grab you one. Shouldn't cost too much. And what I've done with that water is I've added sea salt, and I'm also going to add a dollop of olive oil. The purpose of that is to prevent the noodles from sticking together. Now, let's get our meats into the skillet. We're going to wait for that to heat up. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those noodles over there, we're going to stuff them in there one by one. Very carefully too, you don't want to break your lasagna noodles. That would not be good. So take this meat and just slide it out of the tube there, and you just need 1 pound of ground beef or ground turkey. Plus, in addition, we are also going to add sausage. Now, you've seen me do this before, and you're going to watch me do it again because this is the only type of sausage that we do have. Otherwise, you can get the log of sausage for 1 pound. But what we're going to do is cut the skin right off of that. And then we'll be just left with just some regular, plain old ordinary sausage. Okay, so cut that skin right off of there like that and just drop it right into your skillet here. And there we go. The purpose of this is to make your meat mixture. There we go. You don't want those skins on there. Turn this on. And what we need to do is we need to brown that meat. In order to do that, grab we'll grab one of these. Okay, I'm going to brown this all up together into one mixture of meat. Oops. Would help if you held the handle while you did this. Okay. Sausage and the turkey as well. Okay, now as this starts to cook, we'll cut it and cook it, and as long as it's nice and fine, kind of like you were preparing meats to go into a taco burrito, only this is going to be a lasagna. There are different types of lasagnas that you can have. This one is just the plain old traditional lasagna. We're just going to add some seasoning to that meat, but first, let's get our sauces together, and I'm going to show you my own mixture of ingredients that I would like to use. First, it would help to plug it in.
I thought it was plugged in.
Nope, the toaster was plugged in.
Oh.
Okay, I'm just using the cans of meat sauce because it's cheaper. And that's the main reason. So get yourself a pot like this, and this will be just for sauce. Get as much out of there as possible. There we go. Alright. I got 2 cans. I'm going to be adding to this. Okay. In goes the sauce. Now, I also have this little itty bitty can. I'll just add this to the mix. Because I can't do anything with such a small can of tomato sauce. I had a former roommate, I asked him if he wouldn't mind doing me a favor and picking up some tomato sauce at the store. I didn't expect him to come home with such a little piddling can of stuff I can't even do anything with. And we're going to also add 2 cans of Italian-style stewed tomato. Or Diced tomato, diced tomato. You can use stewed if you want to, but it'll be really thick. I prefer the diced. There's one can. Make sure you drain these too. Whoa, get back on there.
To run away.
Wasn't even hooked up. Okay, now 2 cans. Now make sure you drain it first too. All that juice goes down into the sink. We don't need it because it thins out our sauce too much and we want a nice thick sauce. Diced tomatoes. So it'll be a nice chunky sauce. Let's give this a good stirring too while we're at it. Make sure it doesn't overcook. You don't need the scissors anymore. Stir that around, make sure that all your meats do brown up nicely together. And then, when we're done, we're going to drain it, put it back, add the seasonings, cook for a little bit more, add it to the sauce, or you could just have it off to the side. And that's probably what we'll do. So we'll probably just have it onto the side, that way we can layer it properly and all the sauce won't get absorbed by your meats. But you still want a nice saucy lasagna. I prefer to have it nice and saucy though. Add a few bay leaves. There we go. We'll add 3 because that is a pretty big size of sauce that we're working with. And just remember, those bay leaves are in there, so you won't be able to digest them very easily. It's just there to extract the flavor into your sauce. We're going to turn down the heat too so it doesn't splatter all over. And if you so wish, desire to, get a lid. Now it's time to play the guessing game on which lid goes with that pot. Hey, I got it. All right. Now, cover that up and let that cook. While we come back over here to our meat and make sure there's no pink pieces lurking in our meat. And believe me, if there's pink, like right there, we can detect it. We can see it. So cook a little bit more there. There is no harm in allowing your meat to cook a little extra, especially when it's nice and juicy like this. So just keep stirring. Just keep stirring it around. Remember, cooking is not a race. You are not in a rush for perfection. As a matter of fact, I went to a pizza restaurant in Arizona. It was in Show Low, Arizona. It's called Joey's Pizza. And Joey's Pizza is the finest pizza I've ever had. And I've searched the world over and I've had made lots of different pizzas. Nobody can even come close to Joey's Pizza in Show Low, Arizona. And at Joey's Pizza, they actually have a sign above their cash register that states, and I quote, "Perfection takes time, please be patient." And they weren't kidding, because when we got that pizza, it was absolutely perfect. I mean, there was no bad remarks that I had about that pizza. So if you know anybody who is an Arizona resident, tell them to head up to Show Low, Arizona on the east side in the mountain areas. Tell them to seek out Joey's Pizza. I don't know if it's still there or not, but if it's still there, you're in for a treat. And Show Low, Arizona is quite a small town indeed, but it's a nice small mountain town. So it doesn't get too hot over there like it does in Phoenix. And in Phoenix, you're down in the valley. You're down way down in the lower desert. In there, you're looking at about triple-digit summer all day long. How can people stand to live in Phoenix, Arizona? Well, how can you stand to live anywhere else? How can you stand to live in Michigan? Or how can you stand to live in Seattle, Washington, where it always rains and never shines? And it just depends on what you're used to, and other people who aren't used to it are often the ones who question it. But I've lived in many different places all over the country. I had to adapt to many different cultures and many different climates. Alright, well, that's starting to boil a little bit, and this is all browned up and ready to drain. So let us drain all of our meats. And listen to them juices just run right down the sink, and it can keep on running for all I care, because I don't want that in my meats. Don't want that grease, don't want that juice, don't want none of that. So this will be a very healthy lasagna, since we are using poultry products. You notice that I use a lot of poultry products. Well, it's the healthiest for you. I'm going to set that back here for just a moment. And I'm going to shake all of those excess juices out, and what would help it along is take the back of your spoon and just sort of press your meats over the top, and that helps push all the juices out. Because you want this dry. Now since we got sausage in there too, that's gonna take a little while to get all of that meat drained. But once you see that it stops dripping and it's nice and dry on the top, stick it back into your skillet. That's what I call dry meat. We want it dry, 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 dry. You can add a little water if you want moist, but as long as all the juices are out of there, because that's where all your fat is contained. So drain all that out. I'll clean that later. Right now, let's go to the next step in preparing. You know what? Let's add a little bit of water there. Just a little bit, just to keep it moistened so that way when we add our seasoning, it won't be too bad. So a couple good spoonful sized, generous dollops of water. Probably 3 spoonfuls for 2 pounds of meat. And now, start off with some basil. And you can add these to taste, which is basically what I'm doing. But if you want a little form of measurement, 1/4 teaspoon each for 2 pound intervals. And not to be forgetting beef oregano, oregano, oregano. Alright, now you can also add something to spice it up with, a little chili powder. The water will help absorb that seasoning and put it back into your meats and kind of meld everything together into one. But for an extra added bonus, and especially if you're out there from the Maryland area, you know what I'm talking about when I say, well, adding a little Old Bay will really perk this recipe up. So let's add a nice portion of Old Bay seasoning. Alright, not too much, but we're looking for about a 1/2 teaspoon, or was that a 1/2 teaspoon or 1/2 tablespoon? I don't know. I'm just adding it to taste. So we're adding a generous portion of Old Bay here to give it a nice little Chesapeake spice to our meats. Yes, there's nothing finer than the flavor of the old Chesapeake by the makers of Old Bay, McCormick's. There we go. Oh yes, I remember going by the McCormick's factory many a time when I was living in Maryland. Just catching the smells and the whiffs of all the seasonings that they happen to be making, and ooh, I would just love to have gone inside there at that time. Stir in that sauce. It's going to be a lot of sauce with this recipe, so you might actually have some extra the next time you make lasagna. We've got plenty more ingredients to make more lasagnas. As a matter of fact, I want to also show you how to make a taco lasagna, but unfortunately I don't have the ingredients that I need. I need more ingredients than what you see here. A taco lasagna involves the same type of meat that we're using here, only it's going to be seasoned with taco seasoning instead of Italian and Old Bay seasonings. We're going to be using taco sauce in the place of tomato sauce, and we're still using these long noodles. They're very delicate, so you want to be careful with those noodles. You can also do a barbecue chicken lasagna too, and that sounds good too. Instead of tomato sauce, use barbecue sauce. Use some shredded chicken, and what else could you use? Cheese. Possibilities are endless in what you want to do with a lasagna, but this is just the traditional way, the basic way of making a lasagna. Oh yes, and since shredded cheese is a melting cheese, we're going to be putting this on the top. But since you want a cheese that's going to help fill out your lasagna, you can use ricotta cheese, or since ricotta cheese was not really of the essence at the time, we're using cottage cheese. You can use either one. Cottage cheese lasagna will be even less fattening than your ricotta cheese lasagna, but ricotta cheese is more closer to a traditional lasagna as you can get. But either one will work. I prefer cottage cheese because it's fat-free. Cottage cheese is better for you, And this is going to be a 100% healthy lasagna if you do it like this. Alright, so as you can see, those bubbles are starting to become a little more frequent. So it won't be long before boiling point is reached. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and carefully drop our lasagna noodles in. Very carefully. One. And you want to go one at a time. Two. Kind of put them in cross like that. Three. Very carefully. Four. Oops. That wasn't careful. Go. See if you can find a way where you can put the whole noodle in like that. 5. Very carefully. Just start at one end and just carefully drop the other. Now, since these are broken, you want to be extra specially careful with those ones. Okay. This one's cracked. You probably see that the cracked ones will probably finish breaking apart. If that happens, some things you can't help, but hold on. There we go. All of our lasagna noodles are now in that pot. What we're going to wait to do is wait till they soften up, then you can actually stir it. Once it's stirred, we're looking at, like I said, 12 to 14 minutes total in that boiling water. And then we'll pull them out, we'll drain them, and we'll set the noodles aside very carefully on paper towels, so that way they won't be as moist when you layer it. And keep that meat cooking. Well, since it's already cooked, and the oven is going to keep it heated the rest of the way, we can turn off our sauce and our meat once it's done. And that sauce is about as done can be. So, what we're going to do here is take your bay leaves, place them back on the top. There's the other one. There's one more. There's one more in there somewhere, so we're going to just try to find where that thing is. It's going to go into the bottom too, because they like to hide. Oh, wait. Nope, that's not it. It's in there somewhere. Just put it aside. There it is. I see you. Come out of there. Okay, just set it right back on the top there. It had plenty of time swimming around in that sauce, and we're just going to take that extra one and just slide that back onto the top there. Close it up. Let this flavor kind of permeate together. Now you want to keep your meat separate from your sauces, and I'll tell you why. Because when you add meats to a sauce, usually the meats absorb that sauce right up, and especially if you drain the fat, that sauce is going to be absorbing into this meat. And when you have lasagna layers, you want it nice and saucy. You don't want it meaty, but the meat is still going to be a part of the recipe. It's just going to be layered on separate from the sauce. So in the essence of that, we are going to need, if we have one, yes we do, a ladle. Having a ladle is essential for working with sauces, especially when you're making manicotti, when you're making lasagna, when you're making anything that sauce is a very major step in the recipe. Get yourself a ladle. They're not very expensive to get, and they're very handy to have. Check on our noodles. What we're going to do with that is we're going to take with a noodle spoon, we're just going to poke it around and just take it from the bottom up and see how flexible those noodles are. They're pretty flexible. Now, I know a lot of people are turning their nose up at cottage cheese. Instead, saying, why not a ricotta cheese? Well, like I said before, I would love to have gotten ricotta cheese, but because of the budget, this was the best I could do. But it really doesn't make a difference what type of cheese you use, because both will have the same consistency, just one won't taste like the other. Ricotta cheese you can actually add egg to and mix it up real well. But for this recipe, you really don't need to do that. You just take the ricotta cheese as is. Now look, there's a good boil. Look at that boil. We want this to be al dente, which means firm but cooked. And if it's not fully cooked, then it's not ready to come out of there. While we're waiting for that, let's preheat our oven to 375. Okay, now when the oven is preheated, those noodles should be done. and then I can show you how to go from step A to step B. Now you can layer it however you want to. You can layer this. There is no right or wrong way to layer a lasagna. But here's the best method. You take your sauce, and you put it down on the bottom. Then you take your layer of noodles, first layer of noodles. Then you take your meats, your sauce, and some of this cottage cheese. Take another layer of noodles and repeat over and over again until you get up to the top. When you get to the top, you use this cheese. You cook it in here for about 15 minutes or until the cheese is nice and melted on the top, and all that cheese in there has to be melted. And we are working with mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. You can also get the Italian 5 cheese blends and go really fancy, but like I said, we only limit it to what we have. And we don't have those types of cheeses this time around, even though I would love to get some of those 5 cheese blend Italian cheeses, which include provolone, which include Monterey Jack. Question on everybody's mind now is, what do those noodles look like when they are al dente? I'll show you after I turn off the water, so that way they don't overcook. There we go. Settle that water down. We don't need it boiling no more. Let's see if I can grab. This is going to be the challenging part, getting those noodles out of there. Easiest effort as possible. Well, what we can do. Okay. Whoa, where are you going? Okay. Now, when they're flexible like that, and they have a little bit of stickiness to it, and they're no longer firm, like what you as firm as what you saw before, then they're ready to come out. When they slip and slide off your spoon like that, and you can't pick them up, they're done. There is no picking that up out of there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this back over to our sink and get out the colander we just cleaned out and just carefully dump. And be careful, don't get your face down there, because you can easily get yourself a steam burn like you wouldn't believe. And just carefully drop those noodles in there. Now, I'm going to set that aside for the moment, and immediately what we're going to do with these is run cold water over them. It has to be cold, because we have to cool these right down. And rinse them off good. So that way you can handle them as well as clean the excess starch from them. Get yourself a few paper towels here while you're at it too. I'll just fold this up a little bit so that way they'll soak right into the paper towels. Nice and thick. There we go. Okay. Yeah, and put your e-cig in your pocket. Okay. After you've run cold water over them, gently pick each one of them up. Notice how very flimsy they are. Just kind of lay them down real careful on the paper towel there. Go for your next one. Some of these might still be hot. If that happens, just run some more cold water over it. Alright. Alrighty then. Next step. We are ready to put all of this together. So are you ready? Let's layer our lasagna. Now have that next to your sauce so that way you don't make too much of a mess. And for best results, try to get some without the tomato chunks in it. Just kind of go on the edge there and just kind of push it down into your sauce. You might get a few tomato pieces, but just kind of go over like this. It's okay if there's a little bit of water in there. Kind of just looking for sauce mostly. You get a couple of tomato pieces in there, that's okay. But you want a solid layer of sauce on the bottom. And the main reason for this is so that your noodles don't stick to the bottom of your glass or ceramic casserole dish. Kind of just use the back of the ladle to spread it out evenly. There we go. Okay, next layer. Grab some noodles. And we're going to take it very carefully. One. You might actually find they expand, which is not a problem because it's all going to be covered. Make number two. Lasagna noodles will expand in the heat. That's another issue I forgot to mention earlier. These noodles will expand on you. 3. So, even if you have to overlap your noodles, not a problem. Okay, now, let's take a layer of meat. Okay, here we go. Let's take it on down right in here with a layer of meat. Now, it's probably best to just use this meat sparingly because you're only using 1 pound of ground turkey and 1 pound of turkey sausage, or in your case you might use ground beef and regular sausage. However the formula goes in your household, we like healthy, so we're using turkey in the place of red meats. Okay, now once you got that fully covered, it's on to the next layer, sauce. Sauce goes right over the meat. So, I'm going to pour that on as thinly as possible. You don't want to use too much sauce in your layers, but sometimes you can't help it. Once you got your sauce completely covering your meats here, we'll go on to the cottage cheese layer, then another layer of noodle, then another layer of meat, another layer of sauce, another layer of noodle, and cheese. Or if you run out of noodle on the top, that's why we did 9 of them. I'll show you how to pretty much go from there. But if you follow this recipe like I'm doing here, then there should be nothing to it. Okay, sauce, sauce. Now, once you got it all covered, spread it evenly like that. Using the back of the label, you want it all even. And we've about filled up half of this casserole dish already. So, let's take a thin layer of cheese, cottage cheese. Okay, and just go like this. Also helps to have your cottage cheese at room temperature. And even if you have to sink that into the sauce a little ways, that's okay. Because you want to make this as thin of a layer as possible. And just go in here with your cottage cheese or your ricotta, whichever one you have handy, whichever one you prefer. There is no wrong way to do it up. If you like ricotta cheese, use ricotta cheese. If you like a more healthier lasagna like what we're doing here and you want it still flavorful, then use cottage cheese. And that's one my mom used to do, is use cottage cheese. That's the way my mom used to do it. Okay, so I think we only really needed just 6 noodles, really, because look at that, we're almost over to the top already. This will be a good lasagna. There we go. Alright, now the rest we just set aside. Go for more noodles. Okay. Now, when you get to this point, you notice that your noodles are going to be pretty full. So take your next 3 noodles. Take this top one here. There we go. Like that. Okay, now what we're going to do here, since we already got cottage cheese in the middle, we're just going to take the meat. Sprinkle it on like this. Okay. Now you're probably going to have some leftover ingredients, and then if that happens, then you know you have enough for your next lasagna. Let's top that off with sauce here. You know you have enough for your lasagna. Or mixed together in another recipe. Who knows? The possibilities are practically endless. We top it off with some good old mozzarella cheese. Or 6 cheese, 5 cheese Italian blends of cheeses that you can use, but we're just using good old mozzarella. You need a lot of this, because this has to cover the entire top of your lasagna. A corner there and a little there. Now, next, we finalize our masterpiece with the crowning touch of Parmigiana. Take your finely shredded Parmigiana. Just like go over the top of that with Parmesan. There. Let's take our lasagna and slide it into the oven. 15 minutes later, we'll check on it. We'll see if it's ready to come out of there. What we're looking for is that the top of your lasagna has got to be nice and melted. And if it's not fully melted, leave it in there for a little extra. And sometimes you want a nice well done lasagna where the cheese is nice and firm. Other people like it nice and stringy. I like it stringy, but you know, I'm going to leave it up to your best interest. If you want a nice stringy lasagna, then leave it in for about anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. If you wanted a little more crispiness on the top of your cheese, you want to make it a little bit burnt on the top, like some people do, leave it in for 20 minutes. But however you like your lasagna, we're going to come back and show you our finished results, and then we'll take a taste test. So join us for that time when that time comes. Well, what do you say we take a look and see how well our lasagna is coming along? So let's open this up and whoa, wait a minute, whoa. Never reach into an oven without the magic tools. And let's use a little magic to bring them on, shall we? Abracadabra. That's better. Now, let's take a look at our lasagna. Now, a little bit of a tip for you. Number one, make sure you pat your noodles down first, removing it of all water before you layer it together. And number two, if you are worried about having extra ingredients coming up from the bottom or the middle up out of your casserole dish, always remember to keep a cookie sheet underneath your pan. That way it catches all the dribblings and it doesn't have to touch the bottom of your stove where it smells like it's stankin'. But let's check the results of our lasagna. Ooh, look at this. Now that is what I call lasagna. Close that up. Look at all of that cheese on the top of there, and some of it got burnt on there, as you can see. It's not as stringy as I would like for it to be, but it's good enough. It is good enough. We left it down for a good 18 to 20 minutes, so that's what it'll look like when it's done. Something that you can do like that, because that cheese will be kind of tough. If you try to do that with a spatula, it's not going to go over really well. So using a knife, cutting through your cheese layer will cut through all the other layers you got. And be careful about it too, because you don't want to knock all of your ingredients out over the sides. It's almost like biting into a jelly donut and everything comes out the side. And this is a nice saucy, albeit watery too, because we did have some water retained in our noodles. So our sauce is going to be a bit thinner than we'd like. So, which is why I say always pat your noodles whenever you, before you slide it into your oven, or before you layer it actually. Be very careful not to push the cheese into the sauce, because then that's going to push all your ingredients off to the side. And this is quite a messy recipe, but I think we got this lasagna pretty worked up. Look at all those ingredients just rushing out to the sides to come out right as soon as we're cutting this thing down. But do it as best as you can with the knife. Now you might have some noodles sticking up off the side here. That would be nice and dry and crunchy, but sometimes you just can't help. Let's get some plates and see if we can carefully serve up some lasagna. Carefully? Wow, that sounds like a challenge. Well, keep in mind too, I haven't really made many lasagnas. So, let's get the first slice out of there. Whoa, here we go. Being very careful to lift it up and out. And here comes another one. Whoa, slippery. No, hey, wait, what happened to that slice? It didn't get cut. Cut that. Okay, quickly and easily. And there we go. There's 2 more slices of lasagna. Get some extra of these ingredients to the side here. Now, if you've lessened the amount of water, it wouldn't be this thin. And therefore, the ingredients would be a little thicker. Yes, it's going to be very watery. Now, I could have helped that along, but food for thought next time. Hot. Really good, really good, really good. Just remember those 2 tips I told you about. Pat the noodles dry, make sure they are completely dry, and if your sauce is too thin, add some tomato paste. And always, under any circumstances, if you bake anything in a casserole dish that you know is going to run over, remember your cookie sheet underneath. That's pretty much a wrap. So, from all of us here in the studio of Old Pop-It Show to all of you hungry viewers out there, remember, if you're not cooking good, you're not eating good. What was that? Like that?
Oh, there they go again.
Storm coming?
Not fucking good.
Is that a storm coming, or is that a generator going out, or what is that?
I don't know.
I don't know. Weird things are happening out in the studio there, folks. Okay. Anyway, these are stewed tomatoes. I thought I got the diced tomatoes. Okay, well, not a problem. Just take your knife and cut some of them up. First, let's get to this can here. Because they look just like the diced tomatoes. Got the same exact color and everything. How was I to know? So, hey, sometimes mistakes happen in the store. Sometimes you can't avoid them. Make sure you don't do that over your food either. Yeah, I stood a little close to the Old Bay. Ah, that's hot. Especially when you got oil in there. Don't dip your finger in the water, whatever you do. What's this, SonicBlu? If you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. I didn't say I couldn't stand it. I said, boy, that's hot. So, yeah, definitely want to be careful when stirring your noodles. Definitely want to be careful when checking them too. Whew. That ain't ready yet. We have now completed one layered lasagna. That was cheese. And from the bottom up to the top, try not to knock any of the ingredients off because it's going to be slippery. Oh, darn it, I didn't make it. Well, good thing this counter is clean. Let's try that again.